like, say last year's budget year, how much you took in and how much you spent, we can actually look at that and I can give you hard numbers. If I can get in back there, which I'm gonna try.
Okay.
So, with your guys' packets, I just threw everything at the front. I wasn't sure how she organized it in the tabs and I was kinda getting pressed for time, so everything's just right at the front. But if you have a question about what it is, just let me know.
Good job.
Well, I can say no. I might be here for purpose.
Want to sit down?
That's okay. Hi.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good.
I'm gonna let that thing
Yeah.
grab that file.
See the bills.
Is that yours?
Yes, thank you.
The bills, that's the expenditure sheet here?
Not bad yet.
What?
The bills and stuff that we have, we need to approve,
So that very top one there, the claims by vendor, those are listed, those are all your bills in alphabetical order, and then the next 4 pages, I think, are them more, they're in claim order and they're in more detail. Is that what you're asking?
or? Yeah, because normally we sign them, or initial them.
Oh, I have that sheet right here. I set it aside so that I could explain how, I don't know, is that how Jan did it? Did she fill in the check numbers and stuff?
No.
And do I have a payroll summary on here? No, we didn't do a payroll summary, so I'm not gonna do it. So yeah, that'd be the one that you would sign when you approve the claims.
Maybe you read that.
And I have clean copies of all your stuff right here too.
You might have to do that.
Hey Josh, what's up?
Sir? What was your name?
All right.
Pat?
Good.
Matt.
Very good.
Front row seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tim, I am in to the Black Mountain software, so I should be able to run reports
Okay.
and answer your questions.
Did you get the email today?
I guess we can go ahead and get started with the allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. On our agenda, we'll just press right on here. We're changing the agenda a little bit, as you guys kind of have noticed. First off, we will have public comment. So for anybody that has anything that they would like to bring up before we get started, now's the time. And then I think we'll have another time down here where we can discuss things. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up?
Yeah, you didn't put down the mask required. I wear this mask to protect you as well as myself. I don't know who I may have been exposed to, and I don't know who you've been exposed to. Same reason you should wear a mask.
Well,
Or get a face shield.
if I wear a mask, you wouldn't be able to understand anything I'm saying. If you do not feel comfortable, then you can leave if you're...
This is a public meeting. I have every right to be here.
Okay, that's fine. There's some that will wear a mask and there's some that won't.
When you make public comment, could you tell me your name since I don't know everybody?
My name's Erwin Sankey.
Thank
The old
you.
grouch at School Street.
I'll leave that
Okay.
off the minute.
Yes. Yes. And you are? you'll stay?
Tammy Taylor.
Okay.
So we have a resignation, and I guess I went online the other day and I looked at something, and I think it's something that you need to address with your attorney. Baker, same situation this year, but their city attorney, their counsel was on it. They were informed right away. The application went out right away. And when their mayor's last day was, the acting mayor was in charge. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed.
Well, as you see in our agenda, down towards the bottom, it has the mayor and council. We have a time when we can discuss that. And at that point, then I will discuss some of the things about that. Anybody else? Sheriff's report.
Good evening. So for December, you finished with 66 hours. You only got a couple for January starting out, which is expected. 21 calls of service for from the 1st of December until the 3rd. Not a lot going on. Had a verbal disturbance. They separated the parties, no charges on that one. They had a part of a PFMA ended up here in town. It occurred out in the county, but one of the parties ended up here and at the end of it was arrested and taken in on a PFN.
Josh, what does the initial stand for?
Partner family member assault. It's a domestic violence. But he ended up here in town causing some problems and we came and got him. We served some TROs, we got a animal abuse complaint, they investigated it, it was unfounded, the animal's being taken care of, but they did check into it. And then we had some civil disputes between some neighbors, some private property got damaged, but they're working it out. It's kind of the overview, quick overview of it. Is there any questions or comments? Okay. Usually I just do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Okay, approved minutes for regular meeting minutes for 12/07 of 2020.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes for
I'd like to hold off for just a second and make a correction on the minutes.
Okay,
On page 1 of 2, the second paragraph from the bottom, it reads that it appears that some public comment was had. Randy Wilkie comments on wearing a mask. As he was deemed intoxicated, he was escorted out of the meeting, and that did not happen. He left on his own accord. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
that's correct.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's make that change.
So just, yeah, you guys, I typed these from Jan's notes and it's really hard to take someone else's notes. So if, I really do welcome all corrections because I was really winging
Yeah.
it here.
That's fine, that's the only thing I had to comment on.
So was he asked to leave the meeting and then left or
No,
just left?
he was not asked to leave the meeting,
Okay.
he left on his own accord. At least that was my memory. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other corrections?
Now you can make a motion. I'll approve it.
I'll make a motion, we approve December 7th meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And apologize for missing that.
Okay, special meeting minutes from 12/18 of 2020.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of the December 18th special meeting.
And I wasn't present for that, so.
Okay. Bill? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for 12/18/2020. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Are you voting, Tim?
No,
Should
that should be?
be.
Okay.
So you were aye as well, I'll take it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Well, or,
Um,
maybe I'm incorrect on
He's the acting mayor.
that. I realized, I just thought of that. I was thinking that you were just filling in. So I think you're correct. You shouldn't be voting. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Approved claims, I guess, has everybody had a chance to look at them and approve them?
Yes,
Okay.
I have. I make a motion to approve the claims.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the claims. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Old business, we have an audit report for physical year June 30th, 2018, and it's Matt, and I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name.
It's Joan.
Joan?
Yep, Joan.
Okay, what do you got?
Okay. First off, thanks for having me. This is the audit for June 30, 2018, which we did issue late last year. Obviously, timing was not great. Kind of go through the high points of things. Stop me if you have questions. Like I said, I can kind of breeze through these, or I can. So to start on our auditor's report, which is on page 8. I'm actually going to take this off so you can understand. So the first page of our auditor's report kind of gives you a rundown of what we were reporting on, what our responsibility as your auditor was, and what your responsibility as town council management was. So we are issuing the audit on the town-wide financials for June 30, 2018, which included your governmental activities, your business type activities, major funds, and then what we call an aggregate remaining, and I can discuss that a little further later. Page 9 will show you what our auditor's opinions are with a government, because we issue different opinions on different sets. Like I said, with your governmental type, your business type, we issue multiple opinions. So in this case, we issued 7 opinions, 4 of which are qualified and 3 of which are unmodified. Unmodified means no issues, they're correct, we're fine with them. 4 qualified, meaning we couldn't validate some numbers, and so we weren't able to give you a clean opinion. And I want to speak to that just because it sounds bad, but it's really not. What had happened was your fixed asset balances, a lot of the stuff that you've done in the past with your infrastructure is 15, 20, 30 years old. There's no invoices to support it. And having not been audited in forever, there was no way I could get right with the balance.
Okay.
That's a record retention thing. Most places, you know, you're shredding old records after 7 years. It's not something that I expected. I was kind of hoping we might be able to get around it, but even involving Norm at Oldness, who does some of the work for the town on the depreciation schedule, he didn't even have records go back that far. So it's just simple fact that I couldn't get right with the beginning balances. It's not to say they're wrong, it's just I can't say with certainty that they are correct.
Okay.
And that is really the only qualification we're giving you, is we just couldn't get right with those beginning balances. So.
But it does kind of give us a baseline to start with.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tough thing to get around. Anything new, like that I audited, is good. Anything prior to the audit is still an issue. The hope is that as you go, it depreciates off where there's no value to it. That was the problem, is certain things were depreciated enough I could say, oh yeah, that's fine. But there was some larger infrastructure with water and sewer that we just couldn't say. I mean, it still had a lot of value to it, even though it's depreciated 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that it just is a record retention thing that you can't really get around, so.
Okay.
So the financials start on page 11. This is what we call the government-wide set of financial statements. So the government-wide encompasses the entire town, including your fixed assets and your debt. So this is presented almost like a business would. It's accrual basis, where we're recording receivables and payables. We're showing everything long-term. So this is the big picture. You'll notice cash, you've got just short of $400,000 as of June 30, 2018 again. That's unrestricted cash. That's cash that the town can do whatever it needs to with. You also have $155,000 in restricted cash, which is required to be held because you have those bonds and those loans. That's part of the bond agreement, that you set that money aside. And so that is money that just cannot be touched. You'll notice a couple other big things. There's a due from other government, which is a receivable of $445,000, of which $438,000 related to some timing at June 30th, 18 with the USDA monies for the infrastructure project. Because what happened was some of the bills that you paid in September and October of 2018 were actually for work done in June. So I had to show that as payable at the end of June 30th. But I also was able to book a revenue and a receivable that shows the offset, so it's not like it's coming straight out of the town, it's against that grant award. And so they owed you $440,000 at the end of the year on that grant. Total fixed assets for the town are just north of $4 million. Of that, 2.7, I believe, and I can look at the number as we go along, was what was added to the infrastructure project during fiscal year 18. 16,000 was accrued as payables at year end for just normal operative stuff. And then, as I mentioned, 440,000 was related to the construction project that you owe. Of your long-term liabilities, you're holding a couple of loans and some bonds, and you're looking at roughly 1.6 million in total debt owed. And the net position is pretty much your equity, so this kind of gives you a breakdown of what you've got equity-wise. $2.9 million in net position, of which 1.9 is really tied up into fixed assets. It's non-liquid, it's hard asset. The next page is the statement of activities, which is your income statement of sorts. And you'll notice, obviously, the major activity has to do with your water and sewer funds. Small town, that's usually the bulk of where it's at. So general government expenses, 130,000, and then you're looking at roughly 300,000 in operating expenses for the water and sewer. Obviously, you're showing a large amount of revenue, but that all went into the infrastructure project, so it's not an income statement effect because it's a hard asset. So it looks like this huge swing of 1.75 million in income on the proprietary side, which is water, sewer, solid waste. But in reality, that's not income because it's tied up into the assets. Your governmental funds, $45,000 increase, so you're maintaining things fairly strong. We're not seeing a negative effect, that's good. Obviously, you'll want to keep that trend going. So, and then page 13 is where we get into the fund statements. So what we're presenting here is the general fund, and then we have a requirement to show other funds that meet 10% of either your assets, your liabilities, your revenues, or your expenses. None of your other governmental funds meet that definition. So they all roll up into one category called other government. So that would be like public safety or lighting or roads, whatever, you know, your non-majors are. You'll notice your general fund, 124,000 in cash, and then roughly 25,000 in liabilities. The one liability that I will discuss, that $21,000 refunds payable, we kind of went round and round. What that is tied to is the over-milling of the general fund. We went ahead and booked a liability. I know in talking with Jan, and I don't know if Kirsten was involved in that conversation, DOA came out later and said they would prefer you to show it a different way, but it was after the audit was issued.
Yeah, I wasn't part of that,
Okay.
so I hadn't heard it.
They were, in a sense, telling you to short your mills to recoup that balance. And so that'll eventually whittle off as you go through the milling process in the future. Okay. So, and then your other governmental funds, roughly $33,000 in cash, no real liabilities. There's not a whole lot there. Page 14, in case you're wondering, is a reconciliation between page 13 and page 11 because they're different bases. The fund statements don't show the debt, they don't show the fixed assets, and so that's what we're showing is just a reconciliation of how you get between one and the other. Page 15 is your income statement for those funds. Revenues in the general fund, 109,000, of which 65,000 was taxes. You did expend 124,000, so a shortfall between the expenditures and the revenues of almost 15,000. That was offset against the sale of some fixed assets, so you didn't see a negative effect in the general fund due to that sale. But in the case of if you didn't have that sale, you would see a negative effect to your reserve in your general fund. As far as the other governmental funds are concerned, 6,500 to the positive. So that's increasing, no issues there. Page 16 is another reconciliation. This reconciles page 15 to page 12. So again, certain things aren't shown in the governmental funds like debt payments and those kind of things because they're reflected differently. So. Page 17 is your proprietary funds. So these are all your utility funds. This would be the balance sheet side of things. You can see the breakdown between water, sewer, and solid waste for cash, roughly 238,000 in total cash there, and then 155 in other cash that's restricted for those debt service payments. At the end of the year, you were owed 53,000 in accounts and other receivables, mostly utility billing. And then
How much was that?
53.8
53.8.
between the three funds.
Okay.
And then, as I mentioned, the 438,000 is related to the grant that you were owed money to. Roughly 3.9 million in fixed assets, so obviously the majority of your fixed assets is held in the utility fund. I kind of covered the other numbers, so I'll kind of skip that. Page 18 would be the income statement for those utility funds. As you'll see, just over 400,000 in charges for services, split between the three funds, 170,000 in the water, 180,000 in the sewer, and 52,000 in the solid waste fund. And then there was $5,000 in miscellaneous revenues, which could be a variety of things. You'll notice
Sale of water.
all operating funds for those utilities are running at a positive 21,000 net income on the water, 94,000 on the sewer, and 3,000 on the solid waste. So you're not expending as much as you're taking in, which obviously for a business type fund is what we want to
That's
see.
a good thing. By the first round.
Sorry, nope, you're fine. Non-operating revenues, these are things that would be not necessarily abnormal, but non-recurring. So your intergovernmental revenue, 1.6 million, that's related to the USDA grant as well as other grants, TSEP, RRGL, all those funds that go into an infrastructure project. And then your interest expense on your debt, $10,000 in the fiscal 18. Obviously, those loans were fairly new and not, well, bond and some of those loans were fairly new, so you weren't fully paying on them. Expect that number to increase significantly. So a total increase in net position in those funds of 1.75 million, as I mentioned, mostly in fixed assets. Page 19 is your statement of cash flows. So this kind of gives you an idea of where the money comes and goes from in those utility funds. We only present this for the utility funds because they're a business type activity. They operate on a different basis than your general fund and those do. So that's why we present this. As I mentioned, 400,000 in cash received from customers, of which 141,000 was paid to your suppliers and your vendors, and then 108,000 to your employees. You did receive 1.5 million in funds from the issuance of debt, and another 1.2 million in funds from the grant, of which you invested 2.2 million into your fixed assets. You also paid 535,000 on principal to your loans or your bonds.
What was that number again?
535,000. And that had to do with kind of a refinancing of sorts. When you took out the USDA project, some of those funds were used to close out an old loan. And so that's why that balance is a little high. I don't suspect it's gonna be that high going forward.
Okay.
Page 20 just shows you your fiduciary statement. That's got $200 roughly in it. It's pretty small. And I believe that's for, that's firemen's or, usually it's like a fireman's relief fund or something is what's held there. Page 21 starts the footnotes. I'm really not gonna cover these just because it's a lot of information that's just kind of generic. So I'll skip through a lot of them. Page 29 is kind of where the meat of it comes into. 29 gives you a breakdown of what you've got held in cash. So $100 petty cash, 503,000 held in demand deposits, so that's checking accounts. 45,000 in time deposits, which usually are CDs. Of that, 157,000 for your governmental funds, 392,000 for your utility funds, and then 84 for that relief fund. Page 30 kind of gives you a breakdown of your fixed assets. So this will show between government and utilities what you've got held in fixed assets. On the governmental side, really not much there. 118,000 is pretty much just appreciating out. No additions to the hard assets. It's just depreciating over the life. As I mentioned, on the utility side, you'll see 2.7 million in construction in progress. So at the end of the year, you actually had $3 million in construction in progress. Once the utility, or the infrastructure project closes out, that will shift down to the infrastructure asset and start to depreciate. But because it's still in process, we don't have a final number, so we can't start depreciating. Your depreciation expense for the year was 36,000 in the utility funds and just short of 3,000 in the governmental funds. Obviously, with that project shifting, you will see a large increase in the depreciation on the utility side. Page 31 kind of gives you a breakdown of what you've got in non-current or debt liabilities. Currently, $5,000 at the end of that year was owed for compensated absences, so vacation payable to the employees. 889,000 in revenue bonds and 795,000 in notes payable. Of the 889 on the revenue bond, 15,000 was due by the end of June 30, 2019, in principal only, not interest. And then on the note payable, 795, you owe 26,632 by the end of the year. Obviously, if you're making your regular payments, that's not an issue, but that lets the reader know what your requirement is for the next year. You'll notice one of the revenue bonds was paid off, that reduction of 336, that's what I was mentioning earlier. The new revenue bond was used to refinance or pay off the old revenue bond. Page 32 kind of gives you a rundown of what the terms are for those bonds and notes. So you currently hold a revolving loan with Department of Natural Resources. It's one of their water and sewer loan that they give out. And actually that one at the top, the 163,000, was forgiven by DNRC in October of 2018. So I had to show it as a liability as of June 30 because as of June 30 it was, but it's gone. No, they've since forgiven it. What you'll do coming into fiscal 19 is it's kind of an accounting switch. You'll actually show a revenue for that amount because they've forgiven it. Another loan with DNRC, 160,000, carries out to July of 2037. Yeah, you actually have two DNRC loans through 2037. And then we showed it as a revenue bond. It's technically was a bond anticipation note as of June 30, 2018. Board of Investments and USDA always get together on these infrastructure projects, and Board of Investments finances until you close out the project, and then USDA comes in and says, here's the money to pay it off, we'll assume the loan. So as of June 2018, you still had the note with Board of Investments, but in July of 2018, USDA did close out and it does become a USDA loan. If you